There was a man named Mick Fanning, and he had perhaps one of the cooler nicknames. His nickname was White Lightning. Everyone say White Lightning. If you call me that from this day forward, I won't complain. All right, White Lightning, kind of a cool nickname, but he was this really talented surfer, like an incredible surfer. Won multiple competitions, year after year after year, and you would watch Mick surf, and it was a work of art. Have you ever seen someone do something and you were like, you were created for that, right? That's how it was watching Mick. When you watch Mick, you saw a guy that clearly seemed to be wired for the waves. But there was this moment in his life that could have derailed everything, changed everything. It was the year 2015, and he was in South Africa at a surfing competition. And while he was out there in the water, out of nowhere, a shark attacked him and bit into his ripcord of his surfboard, breaking it, and his surfboard being destroyed. And somehow, some way, Mick was able to swim to the shore, and he was not harmed by the shark. Now, you can imagine that if you were attacked by a shark in the middle of the ocean, you might rethink getting in the ocean again. Anybody else with me? Like, how long would it take you to get back into the water? For Mick, it only took 6 days. After he was attacked by a shark, he found himself yet again on a new surfboard in the middle of the ocean, ready to catch another wave. And it was almost as if fate was determined to get its way, because 6 days after his first shark attack, while he's on his new board in the middle of the ocean, another shark begins to pursue him. So much so that he has to ditch his board and swim once again to shore. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had been attacked by a shark twice in less than a week, I might call it a career at this point. How about you? Right? Like I might be like, I think this is the universe's way of telling me that I don't belong in the ocean anymore. And yet, even after 2 shark attacks in less than a week, Mick couldn't stay out of the water. You would never find him on the shore. Because Mick made a decision. He decided that he was not created for the safety of the shore. He decided that he was wired for the waves, and he longed for the waves more than he feared the shark. I'm telling you this story because I believe deeply within me, and it's why I'm a pastor in a lot of ways, that every single human being in this room and not in this room, every single human being on this planet is wired for the waves. And what I mean by that is I believe that you were created to create. I believe that God created you with a divine purpose, and that your life was never meant to simply just be existed in. It was meant to be lived fully and beautifully. And whether you agree with me on the Bible or God or the scriptures or anything, I bet we agree on that. That you are here for a reason, that you have great purpose. And yet for many of us, I think if we're like honest, we can be so afraid of dying that we never live. And we can be so afraid of failure that we never risk. And we can be so afraid of disappointment that in the process we miss our destiny. And I feel like I'm on this earth to try and pull people off the shore. Like I feel like I'm on this earth to push people into the waves a little bit. I feel like I'm here to not let you settle. And that's so much of what today is about, not only for you individually, but for us collectively as a church. I long for us to be a church that refuses to settle for life on the shore when you were created for the waves. I mean, what's interesting, though, about the shore, right, is that the shore is tricky. It is both the safest place you can live your life and the most dangerous place you can live your life. Right? The shore is safe because it almost guarantees you'll not experience great failure, great pain, great loss, great struggle, because the shore is safe. But it's dangerous because it is also, when you choose to live your life on the shore, simply existing, it's dangerous because you are almost guaranteeing with certainty that you will never step into the great future that God created you for. Yes, you may not experience great failure, but the cost very well could be a great future. And if you're going to move from the shore into the waves that you were created for, there's got to become a point where you decide. There's got to be a point where you decide that I long for the waves more than I fear the shark. Like I long for what God wants to do in the waters, in the deep of his purposes for my life. And so this brings me really to the driving question for you individually, but also for us as a church today. A question that requires a lot of honesty. And I want to invite you not to just skip over it, but to really think about it. The question is, whether you win or lose, succeed or fail, do you know without reservation that you are giving everything you have to living the life that God created you for? Do you know, like without any hesitation, you're like, I am living the life that God has created me for. I have not settled for the shore. I have not settled for safety. I've not settled for comfort. I've not settled for complacency, but I am in the deep of what God is wanting to do in and through my life. Do you know, with no reservation, that you are in fact actually doing that? So I want to look at a strange story in the Hebrew Scriptures, and there's quite a few strange stories in the Hebrew Scriptures, and this is maybe in the top 5 for me. There's this king, his name is, and he's the king of Israel, and his name is Jehoash. And he finds himself in a little bit of a predicament because the king of Israel is surrounded by the armies of Judah, and things are not looking good. But he has one advantage, and it's a big one. He has the prophet, the man of God. His name is Elisha. The king of Israel has Elisha in his corner. And that may not sound like a big deal to you, but in the ancient world of the Scriptures, Elisha was a symbol of God's power and goodness and provision and victory. It was like anyone who was on Team Elisha ended up winning, right? I mean, he had Elisha, but the bad news was Elisha was deathly ill. So not only were the armies of Judah surrounding the nation of Israel, but this king of Israel, now his greatest ally, his greatest asset, Elisha, was about to pass away. And we see that the king of Israel is distraught over it. I mean, similar to how I will be whenever Steph Curry leaves the Golden State Warriors. I can imagine he's in the fetal position, just weeping like I will when Steph is no longer playing. And this is where we see the story unfold. In 2 Kings, it says this: when Elisha was in his last illness, King Jehoash of Israel visited him and wept over him. my father, I see the chariots and charioteers of Israel, he cried. Elisha told him, get a bow and some arrows. And the king did as he was told. Elisha told him, put your hand on the bow, and Elisha laid his hands on the king's hands. And then he commanded, open the eastern window, and he opened it. Then he said, shoot. So he shot an arrow. Elisha proclaimed, this is the Lord's arrow, an arrow of victory over Aram, for you will completely conquer the Arameans at Apec. And then he said, now pick up the other arrows and strike them against the ground. And so the king picked them up and struck the ground 3 times. But the man of God was angry with him. You have struck the ground. You should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times, he exclaimed. Then you would have beaten Aram until it was entirely destroyed. But now you will be victorious only 3 times. Then Elisha died and was buried. Sort of an abrupt ending to a strange story, right? I mean, this is one of those stories, if you read it in the morning during, your quiet time, and you read it, you might think to yourself, that's a strange one. I mean, how could the king's future be so affected by whether he struck the ground with an arrow 3 times or 5 times or 6 times? And isn't it annoying that Elisha didn't give the king of Israel any instructions? Like, he didn't say, by the way, before you do this, I need you to keep hitting the ground until I say stop. He doesn't do that. There's no rules or prerequisites. And yet, what we see happen here in this story is that because the king quit too soon, he forfeited the original promise that was extended to him. And because he quit too soon, he wasn't able to step into the original full promise that God had intended. He didn't experience the full victory, which is sort of a sobering point, isn't it? It makes you wonder how many times God has offered us a full and beautiful promise for our lives, for our jobs, for our marriages, for everything that we are. And while God offers us a full promise, we quit too soon and miss the fullness of what God is wanting to do in our lives. It makes you rethink what real failure is. Is real failure failure? Or perhaps, according to God, real failure isn't failing, real failure is quitting. And real failure is when you quit too soon and you fall short of what it is that God is wanting to do in and through your life. I mean, it really makes you wonder, how many battles have you lost before they even began because you quit too soon? So I believe the story of Elisha, the strange story about a command to shoot an arrow and strike some arrows, is sort of a metaphor. It gives us a picture of what it looks like if you are going to step off of the shore and into the deep waters of God's full promises for your life. I think this picture, if we extrapolate some meaning from it, we can get a picture of what this looks like in our lives in 2024 here in San Francisco. See, I think the first thing that we can take note of is that before the king could step into the fullness of God's promises, he was told that he needed to shoot an arrow out the window. I think it's a picture of what it will require of you if you're going to step into the fullness of God's promises. What is it going to require you? There are going to be moments where you're going to have to shoot arrows of faith into the future. Now, arrows are an interesting weapon. Arrows are different than any other ancient weapon, right? With a sword, you know, its use is activated whenever you swing it in your hand. But the limitation of a sword is that it can only go as far as your arm can reach. But an arrow is interesting because a bow and arrow only is useful when you shoot the arrow. And until you shoot the arrow, it really doesn't do you much good. But when you shoot the arrow, it has the ability, unlike the sword, to go where you currently are not. It has the ability to reach places that you cannot reach on your own. It has the ability to win battles before you ever face that battle face to face. I think it's a picture of what it's going to look like if you're going to step off the shore and into the deep waters, that you're going to have to shoot some arrows of faith. And what I mean by that is that you're going to have to enter into your future in prayer before you enter into your future in person. Like an arrow, we're going to have to shoot arrows of faith into the future, believing that God is going where we cannot go, doing what we cannot do, and winning battles that we have yet to face, if we're going to step into the deep waters of God's purposes for your life. Now, I am no professional arrow shooter. I don't know what you call a person that shoots, an archery guy, anarchist, not anarchist, and what is it called? Like archer? An archer. Okay, clearly I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know much about shooting arrows. It's not like a hobby of mine. But I do know this. I do know that if you want to have any chance of actually shooting the arrow, there's 3 things you got to do. And you know this too, and you're not an archer. That's not your thing either, right? But there's 3 things we all know you got to do. First you got to point, right? Y'all scared right now. You got to point, right? You got to aim. Where are you aiming at? And then you got to pull it, right? And you got to pull it. You got to introduce some tension. But you can point and pull, but it's really pretty useless if you do not actually release it. Who is the latest to church today? Yeah. Like, you gotta point, and then you gotta pull, and then you gotta release it. You gotta let go. Prayer works a lot of the same way, doesn't it? See, if you're going to shoot arrows of faith into the future, entering into your future in prayer before you enter into it in person, you're going to have to first begin to point your prayers a certain direction. Like, what do you want God to do? Remember the story that Gabby shared last week about blind Bartimaeus? I love that Jesus, he says, what do you want? What do you need? And what I love is that blind Bartimaeus doesn't give him what we often give God, and that is some vague response or general response. Blind Bartimaeus doesn't say, could you bless my life? He says, I want to see. I'm blind, and I want my eyes to work again. I want to see again. But most of us, we don't offer specific prayers, do we? Specific prayers are a little scarier. You see, it's easier to say, God, would you bless my life? God, would you bless my marriage? God, would you bless my work? And I wonder sometimes if God is hearing us and going, what do you really want? Can you be more specific? Can you actually point the arrow somewhere? See, I think for us, it takes more faith to say, God, I need you to heal the tumor. God, I need you to restore the marriage that was broken because of an affair. God, I need you to provide this promotion, because if I don't get this promotion, I'm not going to be able to stay in San Francisco. God, I need you to provide this paycheck, this amount, so I can pay rent. Like, I think there's something more powerful and actually requires more faith to not offer God a general prayer, but to actually offer God a specific prayer, to point the arrow at a very clear target. But then you got to introduce some tension. And this is the part we don't like. Like, if you want to step into your future faithfully, you're going to have to become really good friends with tension. Now, I've learned that everybody wants faith, but nobody wants tension. And the problem is that you're never going to experience great feats of faith without some tension in your life. Everybody wants a miracle. Nobody wants to be in a position where they need one. And yet, it's not a miracle if you're not in need one in the first place. There is no testimony without tension. And if you want to experience great faith and have a great testimony in your life, then you'll have to buckle up, get ready. You're going to experience some great tension. But at some point, you actually have to release the arrow. At some point, you actually have to loosen your grip, open your hand, surrender your life, and say, God, I'm entrusting you to go where I cannot go, to do what I need you to do in this very specific area of my life. And I'm trusting that you're going to win the battle before I ever face the battle, that you're going to go beyond what my reach is capable of. If you're going to move from the shore to the waters of God's purposes, you got to point, you got to pull, and then at some point, you got to release. Makes you wonder, I wonder how many prayers you guys are holding on to. I mean, it doesn't make sense, does it? I mean, can you imagine if I'm in the ancient world and I'm an archer, and I go into battle and I'm like this, but I refuse to let go of it? Like, I'm not going to I'm going to die. Like, that's what's going to happen. Like, that's what would happen. Like, at some point, you can pull and you can point, but you got to release that thing. What do you need to release? What do you need to trust that God is going to be victorious over? What do you need to believe God can do that you cannot do right now? I mean, this church, man, for the past 10 plus years, we've been pointing and pulling and releasing again and again and again, believing that God's going to win battles that we cannot win on our own. And I'm doing this because I've seen God do it earlier on in my life. I remember when I was 19 years old, not a facial hair in sight. I was so young, but I was in love. I was in love with this beautiful, amazing, kind, funny girl named Jenna. And by the way, we celebrated 18 years of being married this past Monday, so it's been a great 18 years, but it started with me being like, oh my gosh, I feel like God wants me to marry this girl. And I know that sounds weird. I don't necessarily, fellas, maybe don't lead with that, like on a first date, like God wants me to marry you. But I really felt like God wanted me to marry her. But the problem was I was 19 and I was broke like a joke, right? And I could not afford a ring. And I didn't know much about marriage because I was 19, but I did know enough to know that if I showed up, got down on a knee and gave Jenna a ring pop, that it probably wouldn't go very well. And so I remember praying this prayer. I was like, God, if you want me to marry Jenna, then I need this specific dollar amount so that I can buy this ring that I had been looking at. And I said this prayer. I pointed, pulled, released, and just trusted God with the rest. And soon thereafter, my mom gave me a call, and she said, hey, your grandpa, who had recently passed away, he said before he passed away, he decided he wanted to give you a little bit of money. And I was like, how much money did grandpa give me? And do you want to know how much my grandpa gave me? Mind your business. It's personal. Just kidding. But he gave, I can't make this stuff up. He gave me to the dollar, the exact dollar amount I needed to buy the ring to propose to Jenna. Now, I'm not saying when I pointed, pulled, and released that arrow in faith that God took that arrow and killed my grandpa with it, but that would be dark. But I wonder if maybe when I began to step out in faith, God just began shifting things and getting everything in order exactly the way they needed to be. I mean, we've been pointing, polling, releasing prayers in 2022. At the end of the year there, those of you, many of you know it, some of you don't, that we lost our venue, our home that we had as a church, and we were homeless as a church. And this was after the pandemic, after we finally got our feet on the ground and reopened a little bit, and then we lost our venue and we were homeless, and it was a really desperate, difficult time for myself, for Jenna, for the church, and we weren't sure what was going to happen or if we were going to be able to make it. And then Jenna, she showed us this space, showed me this space of, hey, there's this building in the Presidio. We should maybe go look at it. It could be really amazing. And because I'm such a man of bold faith, I said, there's no way we're going to get approved for that building. But I was desperate. Desperation will make you do funny things, won't it? Sometimes desperation is exactly what you need before revelation. Sometimes you need that. That pushed us to walk through this building and look at something that I honestly, in the back of my mind, did not believe God was going to be able to provide. And because we're not a VC, we're not like all these other startups here that have so much money. I mean, we are as non-profit as you can get. And yet here we are. We're here. We're not squatting in this building. We actually have a lease here. God opened the door. He did the impossible. And over a year ago, we pointed, polled, and released a prayer as a church to turn this building not to just be a Sunday building, but to be a building that will be used every day for the city. That we wanted to turn this home that God had given us after being in the city for 10 years. We wanted God to turn this home into a common space that would work for the common good of San Francisco. We pointed, pulled, and released a prayer because we wanted to reimagine what would it look like to be the church in San Francisco in a way that doesn't just serve San Francisco 1 hour a week, but every hour of the week, and isn't just about programs, but really is a place for people, all people, to find belonging and love and faith and creativity and justice. What would that look like? And so as a church, we pointed specifically at a number of $1.3 million to raise that. And we did this when we were much smaller than we are now. And God has been so good. We are only $400,000 away from reaching that goal, and we've now completed the first phase of construction. Can I get an amen on that? And we had no business pursuing things like that. I hope you know that. You probably thought that. When I was like, we're going to raise this, you're like, for real? But yeah, when it's too big for you, it's just the right size for God. It's still too big for us, what we're pursuing. And God continues to go ahead of us and open the doors. And God has done that in 2024. 2024, I'm excited to say, has been our best year of ministry since the pandemic. And that may not hit for you, but it sure hits for me. Because before the pandemic, we were a 350-person church, 6 full-time staff members. We are about to start another Canvas church in Bernal Heights just before 2020, and then 2020 demolished it. It just brought it all back to ground zero. And it's been a long road. It's been a journey where it has felt like the wind has been against us, but now in 2024, it has finally felt like the wind's been on our back instead of against our faces. That we finally have momentum again entering in this new season as a church. And so I want to celebrate what God has been doing. And you're going to have a lot of reasons to clap, but I want you to save all that clapping energy to the very end when I share all the stats, all right? So here's a few things that we can celebrate in the first 6 months of 2024. In the first 6 months of 2024, we have grown by 67% as a church community. We have seen God bring so many new friends to this community and people plugging in. We've seen 144% growth in Canvas Kids. God bless all our Canvas Kids workers. And then we've had 147 people serving on the Dream Team. This church does not exist without those who serve on the Dream Team. We have 208 people who have joined a Canvas group in 2024. We've given a little over $50,000 to our justice partners, both locally and globally. We've seen 72 people plugged in at Belong Night, our bi-monthly event that we do here. We've had 3 people who have been baptized, and 108 people have taken their next step in their faith by joining a growth group. Can we just give God praise in this place? Come on. And that's just the first 6 months. What could the next 6 look like? It could be amazing. But we made 6 goals heading into 2024 3 of which we've completed already, 2 are in progress, and 1 we need to get off the ground. The 3 that we've completed is that we've launched a second service, which you are attending, so hopefully you know that by now. We've seen over 200 people join a group. Our goal was 200. We launched care groups, which is mobilizing people to go out and serve in San Francisco, partnering with nonprofits in the city. We are in progress and on track to give away $100,000 to our local global justice partners, doing incredible work in the city and beyond. And then in October of 2024, we are going to be bringing back, and for some of you, it's experiencing it for the first time, Love Week 2024 is happening. And if you're not sure of what Love Week is, it is about to become your favorite week of your life. Love Week is when we spend an entire week, and twice a day, 7 days in a row, we partner with local nonprofits and mobilize hundreds of people to serve accumulation of over thousands of hours in our city, making a tangible and meaningful difference here in San Francisco. We are already planning it. It is in progress, and it's coming in October. And then the one goal that we haven't gotten off the ground, but we need to, is to launch Canvas Students. We have more junior hires and high schoolers that have been coming. We need to create a space for them. If you're passionate about students, help us get this off of the ground. But the progress we have made in just 6 short months, it has been a year, y'all, but God has been doing something beautiful. One more time, can we just give God praise in this place? Come on. But we're not done yet, and neither is the story that we started with, because the story didn't just say, okay, shoot some arrows out the window and trust that God will go where you cannot go and do what you cannot do. No, there's the second part, the strange part, where he is being told to now take arrows that are in his hand and begin to strike them against the ground. And you know the story, because it's the part that was just weird, right? He's striking the ground. He strikes it 3 times, and Elisha goes, nope, you missed it. You were going to have complete victory. Instead, you're only getting half. You're only going to get a little bit of what I originally promised to you. And the reason is because you quit too soon. You see, this story shows us a couple things important if we're going to step off the shore and into the deep waters. First, yes, you will need to shoot some arrows in faith and believe God to do things that you cannot do, but there are still going to be things that God has entrusted you to do. That there is both radical faith and relentless obedience if you are going to step into what God is wanting to do in and through your life. If you want to experience something supernatural in your life, it is both the super and the natural coming together. The super meaning we trust God to do what we cannot do, but the natural of I will take what God has put in my hands and I will be obedient, I will be faithful, I will strike the ground, and I will not stop until the vision becomes a reality. See, if you're going to step off the shore and into the deep waters, then you cannot quit. You've got to continue to strike the ground and refuse to stop. And that brings me to our Here to Stay update. The Here to Stay campaign is our $1.3 million campaign that we launched a little over a year ago to transform this space, and we are about halfway done with that project. Phase 1 is complete. But as soon as that gate comes down, it will become very clear that half the building has been renovated and the other half is not. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to just see a project half done. I don't want to see a vision half done. I don't want to see a big, bold vision that we have only get halfway down the field. I want to take it to the very end and see what God can do through a church that refuses to quit too soon, that refuses to settle for phase 1 being complete when God's like, but I'm just getting warmed up. But if we're going to step into that, it will require of all of us to take what is in our hands and to be relentless in our obedience. So that is what I want to bring to you as my Canvas family. I want to invite you to join me and Jenna and many others who have continued to generously invest and to be a part of helping us reach the finish line of this campaign, to help us raise the final $400,000 that we need to raise in order to complete the construction project. In fact, I just want to give you an update that we cannot move into phase 2 until we raise the final $400,000. And so I'm bringing this to you, both those who gave a year ago at our Here to Stay campaign launch and the 67% of you who have joined this church since then. For some of you, this may be the first real in-depth moment you've heard about this and what's all going on. And I want to invite both of you, whether you gave before or whether you've recently decided to call this your church home, I'm wanting to invite you to join me and to join many others as we seek to reimagine what it looks like to be a church in San Francisco, and we seek to do something that no church in San Francisco is doing. And that is not a knock on any other church in the city. The city's full of some incredible churches, but we feel like God has called us to something unique, more than just one day a week services, but to be an every day of the week service to the city, to be a place where all people can experience belonging. And so we have $400,000 left that we need to raise. And today I want you to prayerfully consider what God has put in your hand, and maybe how God has invited you to take a step of radical and relentless obedience to be a part of building that future and turning it into reality. Now, some of you may be wondering, like, what does phase 2, the final phase, include? I'll give you sort of a high-level synopsis of it, but if you want to walk around the building, if you didn't already before service, you'll see their signs placed throughout the building that will give you a visual of what work is going to be happening where and the vision behind that work. And so I would love you after service to walk and read those signs. It will give you a little visual of what's to come in the second phase of construction so that you can begin to see the future with me. But for those that just want to know now at a high level, what does phase 2 include? It includes 4 key areas. The first is this space that we're in, this space that we're calling the gathering space. And we're going to do a lot of work in this space, but a couple things to note is that big old banner that's right there, we're going to replace it with a floor-to-ceiling wall with entrances that will, a couple different doors for entrances so that you can enter into the space. And the reason that we're building that floor-to-ceiling wall is so that the noise in here can stay in here, and the noise in Canvas Kids can stay in Canvas Kids, so that all of us can have an incredible experience on Sunday morning. Can I get an amen on that? And so we're going to renovate this space to make it a beautiful space, not only for our community, but the community. We have officially rented out this space in October to a Masters of Scale Summit. And I shared this a few months ago, but those who maybe aren't here, this organization has people like Bill Gates and Tyra Banks, and Prince Harry spoke at it a couple years ago, and they're going to use our space as a space for community and networking. So when we build this space, it will allow us to link arms with organizations and people that we would not have been able to link up with otherwise. The gathering space, then the community space. That will be where you can work and play throughout the week, not just on Sunday. It'll be a space for those who work remotely and you are tired of your sofa and you want to sit on our sofa that we'll have here and drink some good coffee while you're at it. That'll be there for you as well, but it'll also be a place for people who just want to build friendships and community all throughout the week. And then where you'll see the coffee shop sign, we're going to open up a nonprofit coffee shop that will also be open throughout the week. And today we're actually announcing for the very first time the name of that coffee shop. It's going to be called, drum roll please, here we go. It's going to be called Golden City Coffee. And it's one of the more unknown names and old names of San Francisco, the Golden City. And we're calling it Golden City Coffee, and it will be a completely nonprofit coffee shop. Every cup of coffee sold will make a difference in San Francisco. And you have the opportunity actually to help us pick the logo. Because if you go to that sign, you'll see the 2 logos that we are debating between. You can vote for whichever logo you like the most, and by the time we start construction, the logo with the most votes is going to be the official logo of Golden City Coffee right here in the Presidio. And then last but not least, because this matters, we're going to update the restrooms. And we're going to make the restrooms nicer, and as well as something, we're making sure everything here is up to standards when it comes to ADA compliance, and we're doing that because we don't want one single person to walk through this room and not feel like we did not have them in mind. We want every person who walks in this building to know we thought of them, they're seen, and they're valued here at Canvas. Phase 2 is going to be a lot of work, and we're $400,000 away from being able to enter into that phase. Now, if we're able to meet that goal, let's say perhaps we're even able to surpass that goal. I want to share just a quick moment of some stretch goals that we have. Some goals that if we're able to pass 400,000, how will we turn this house into a home? Because you wouldn't just buy a home and not buy a sofa or not buy a bed. Kurt just got a home, so hopefully you got some furniture on your way. But you wouldn't, you wouldn't want to buy a home and not actually make it feel right for people to come in. And so our stretch goals are all about how do we turn this house into a home, and there's 3 ways that we would do that, and it would cost us $315,000 more to be able to turn this into reality. The first is by adding an indoor play structure, which is the first drawing of that play structure in the carpeted area of the kids' space. I don't know about you, but I would play on that thing. It's a pretty incredible design that is a representation of the Painted Ladies, the Presidio, and the Golden Gate Bridge, and it would offer something that really nowhere is offering in San Francisco, and a very safe, indoor, beautiful place for kids to enjoy, but also for parents to be able to enjoy a full cup of coffee while their kids play and have a great time. And so we'll be adding this as a part of our stretch goals. Secondly, we need to furnish our community and kids space. We'll need to furnish it, and IKEA will not do. We will need to make sure that the furniture is ready to handle the traffic of people coming in and through the building multiple days out of the week. And so we would need to furnish both the community space and the kids space. And lastly, upgrading our audio, video, and lighting. You may have been here a couple weeks ago when our audio board just decided to die in the middle of worship. And that's because our equipment, most of it, has been here since we started the church. It's very old. We have never really upgraded, and in order to create this space to be a really great space for worship, prayer, and for events, we're going to need to do some upgrades on our audio, video, and lighting. Now, I want to be abundantly clear that our first and primary goal is the $400,000 so that we can get construction done. That is our primary objective, to meet that $1.3 million. The $315 is a stretch goal. If we're able to surpass the $400,000, then this is what we would pursue next, to turn this house into a home, not just for us, but for everyone who walks through our doors, not just on Sunday, but every day. It's a big vision. It's a vision I can't do without you. It's a vision we can't do without one another. It's a vision that's going to require us to take what's in our hands and say, I believe in what God is doing in this church enough that I'm going to get some skin in the game and be a part of it. And so that's what I want to invite you to do. And if our worship team wants to come up, that at the end of service today, I want to invite you to take this Here to Stay card. And if you're ready to say, look, I want to be a part of turning this into a reality. And again, if that's not where you're at, no shame, no weirdness, I promise. But if you're here and you're like, no, I want to give my life to being a part of something bigger than myself, why not this? Why not invest in something that will affect San Francisco for years and years and years to come? And so I want you to fill out this card if that's you. Put your name, your email. You can check off how you're going to support and be a part and how much. And I just want you to be prayerful about this. I don't want you to just do this out of hype. Seriously. Please don't just put a random number down. Really, God, what is it you would want me to do? What have you put in my hands? I don't want you to do what you can't do. I'm asking you, can you do what you can do? It's not your job to do what you can't do. It's your job to do what you can do. And when you do what you can do, God will do what we could never do. But it starts with us being faithful with what God has put in our hands. And so we're going to go into this time of worship. And I want to invite all of us in this room to just ask this question, whether you've given to Here to Stay already, or maybe you've never given before. Jenna and I are going to be giving again as well. We're going to be investing as well. And maybe that's you, but maybe for others of you, this is your moment to just step into generosity like you've never done before and to be a part of something bigger than yourself. Let's reimagine what it looks like to be the church in San Francisco, and let's give the city a church it needs.